that you were touching on, Chuck, and it gets back to education. When students show up at Berklee or before that, the first question I like to ask them, I get all the bass students together and I ask, when does your career start? And 9 out of 10 answers will be, oh man, as soon as I throw my hat in the air or I get a gig and I'm out of school and all of that. And I'll say, well, that's one way to look at it. I said, but my experience tells me that if your career hasn't already started, look around at the people around you. Your career starts right now.
Oh, you hanging out right? Oh, you hanging out right? Hanging out right? Oh, you hanging out right? I know, hanging out right? Oh, you hanging out right?
Peter, you were just getting ready to say something.
Well, I think I was just going to confess that basically when I was a very avid going to the record store young man, and the two record stores I frequented, one near my hometown in New Jersey and the other up in northern Michigan, were both surprisingly hip. And basically, Chuck, if the album had your name on it, I bought it. and so I got exposed, and then also Bernard. If I saw Bernard's name, and then after a while, if I saw Eric Gale's name on it too, and usually it'd be all three of your names. But I've discovered so much great music just because the first thing I'd look is who's playing bass. Chuck Rainey. All right, I'm taking this home. Yeah. And I just can't thank you enough.
Oh, man, you're very welcome. You're making me blush. I don't mind blushing. I've been very, very fortunate. I came upon the backs of some great musicians, and I have not always been correct. That's what comes from also too, and knowing that I was incorrect at times in playing with these guys, because I learned how to do that in college. I learned how to do that. I learned how to do that musically in whatever band I was playing in. To where I get to certain people, they bring out of me certain things that just I would not think of if I was playing with another group of people. You know, so thank you for those kind words. I really appreciate it very much. You know,
Chuck, yeah, I mean, I've been on a lot of calls with you with Zoom, and we were on a big one the other day with Rocco, but Peter, you just nailed it, man. I mean, Chuck walks into a room, he's like Ron Carter that way. Like everybody shapes up and they get on their A game, and Will Lee's sitting there, you know, everybody's like dialing it in, all of my heroes. But Chuck, man, you've some people put a dent in the music industry. You totaled it, bro. I mean, you just totaled, just dented it so much. It's amazing. But I want to say one thing that you were touching on, Chuck, and it gets back to education. When students show up at Berklee or before that, the first question I like to ask them, I get all the bass students together and I ask, when does your career start? And 9 out of 10 answers will be, oh man, as soon as I throw my hat in the air or I get a gig and I'm out of school and all of that. And I'll say, well, that's one way to look at it. I said, but my experience tells me that if your career hasn't already started, look around at the people around you. Your career starts right now, because the relationships that you build, especially at a college like USC or Berklee or North Texas where I went, or University of Miami where I then eventually went, and numerous other schools, the relationships that we start to build there to me, there is so much value in that. There, in my career, it's been value. I mean, Greg Bissonette and I used to sit around at North Texas and listen to Miles Smiles, and then we get in there and try to do what Tony and Ron are doing, and then we would mess it up, and we turn the beat around, and people get mad at us because they couldn't find one, and we weren't sure where it was either, but we would do it over and over again. Man, Ray Brinker was another great drummer. I know Peter knows Ray and Mike Baker and all of these. I didn't realize till after I got out that most of the good gigs I got came from the relationships I built in college. Greg Bissonette still working with us. We just did a record together last year with Victor Wooten again, you know, after 30 years since doing the first one. Or Ray Brinker. Man, Ray Brinker got me on Maynard's gig, Peter, and you were like it. And I was 10 years after you, but being on Maynard's band after Peter Erskine, it's like being in Miles' band after Tony Williams. Like it's just, that's what everybody on the bus talks about. So, but literally, what got me on that gig, what got me on so many good gigs that led to other gigs with Dizzy or Tull or whoever, it really went back to people I knew in college and relationships that I built. So that's something that you can't put a price tag on, but if you build the right relationships, they can literally feed you for a lifetime, and you can feed them, and it's always a two-way street. Like, you know, that it's mutual. It's not what can you do for me, it's how can we help each other.
So check this out, Steve, because I left home basically when I was 14 and went to a boarding arts high school, Interlochen, Michigan, Interlochen Arts Academy. So this is me and Bob Mintzer in 1970. So 50 years ago,
Wow.
you know, we began working together. So you know, and then and here we are now at USC. So you're so right. The friendships that we form while we're studying, particularly in college, will last a lifetime. And we have that at USC. A lot of bands that have formed, and I know Berklee that there's so many musicians that all travel in those same circles. Now, Chuck, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio.
Wow.
I'm a native son of Cleveland, Ohio, but I grew up in Youngstown,
Okay.
about 60 miles away, playing music. Born in a church family, and then when I played the drum corps, I was in the high school.
As a trumpet player, you were in the drum corps.
I was in the drum corps during the summer of my job when I was in junior high school. I was in a drum corps because they needed a field tom player.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, did you ever ride that roller coaster in Idora Park?
You doggone betcha. Doggone betcha. Now, if that's something to hear somebody talk about my hometown.
Hey.
My family church eventually bought Idora Park.
No kidding.
Yep, and I don't think they still have it, but at one time they did buy it.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because I remember going to Idora Park watching festivals when I was in the high school band.
Yeah, a lot of bands played there in that ballroom.
Yep, absolutely. Cedric Hobbs was a drummer in a band called the Jumping Jacks, Lil Murph and the Jumping Jacks. They were a jazz trio. And that's where I got my first taste of drums, of jazz drums. Steve Gadd talks about him like he's God.
Wow.
Because they knew each other.
What's his name again?
Cedric Hobbs.
Cedric Hobbs. I know that name.
You know, but that's great. Great to hear that, Adora Park. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Not too many people I'm around from Youngstown.
Yeah.
So you know what you guys were just talking about, just going kind of back to the whole idea of the value that you get from attending university or college for music, one of the things you just touched on, Steve, was the network that you develop. And I think just a little while ago, Peter was kind of touching on the idea of, the big bands and learning how to work in a team and working together to do something. But I think there's something else that me and Chuck talk about quite often, and that is the value of getting used to, or working out certain concepts in a safe environment where it's not going to cost you your livelihood. Because there's some dudes I've worked with, and I'm sure all of you have, that they get on the gig and it's like they're auditioning and they end up losing the gig because what they're playing just doesn't fit. It's just not right. And if they had gone to maybe a university or college, they could have worked those things out before they were trying to get involved in the professional world. Which kind of goes back to your story, Steve. I'm still trying to get you to tell that story.
Oh, he's got a lot of stories.
He knows what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah.
Got a great punchline.
We'll save it for the end, but
Okay.
I'll say this, that we always tell students, because there's a lot of fear. A lot of fear. I don't know if Peter sees it, but I see it at Berklee all the time. Performance majors, people who are aspiring to be performers, sometimes are terrified to actually perform. And we started a bass forum where we would have 200 bass players, 250 bass students, and they were afraid to play in front of each other. And one thing that we tell them, and Victor Wooten so great about telling them, and Patitucci tells them, and coming from people like Peter Erskine and Chuck, when he's there, tells them, this is the perfect place. This is safe. Nobody's, we're all on the same team here. We're not competing for a gig. We're here to support you. And trying to encourage people, especially performance majors, or anybody, to put yourself out there and do it in a safe environment. And I think college does offer that. I'll say this, and it was kind of the same way back with the Big Five music schools back in when I was in school in the late 70s, early 80s. But now it's amazing, man. I look at USC and I see who's on the faculty, and I know many of them, and I'm thinking, man, this is like heaven, because if you just Google their discography, you find parts of history that they've made in there, and you get a chance to hang with them in a safe environment. You can learn from them, and you can experiment. Like Greg Bissonette and I would have gotten fired from every jazz gig there ever was until we wouldn't. That's the way it was. I mean, you have to experiment. We had to experiment. We had to learn what worked and what didn't work. And you're right, going into an audition and figuring it out there is not a very economical, it doesn't pose for a very good economic future. But having an environment and a college where they're real people like Peter Erskine, not people who've learned it from a book, people who have written a book and have performed and done it at a level that everybody aspires to do. And I think that more and more colleges realize the value, and I see more and more people on faculty as we get into our 40s and 50s and further on, giving that knowledge back, sharing that knowledge. And it's like when Victor Bailey came to Berklee and I said, man, jump on the faculty. He goes, well, I do a few clinics. He goes, but I've never taught. And I said, man, I've been to your clinics. You don't know that you can teach, but I know you can teach. I can see it in 20 minutes in a clinic. And the next thing you know, he was terrified in the beginning, but as a teacher, even somebody like him, who had just been playing for 40 years, became a beautiful teacher. You know, and he said he learned things about himself that he never knew until he started teaching what he does. And it was just amazing. You know, that's inspiring to me. And so many great musicians, a lot of them don't know how great teachers they actually can be until they do it.
If I may, I got a cute story about Victor. Victor had just started playing in this band, Steps Ahead, and that was with Mike Manieri and Michael Brecker. The late Chuck Loeb was playing guitar, and Victor was playing bass. And his first gig with the band was in Long Beach, California, bandstand just adjacent to the Queen Mary, the Queen Mary Jazz Festival.
Yeah.
And so Miles Davis's band was also playing. This is 1985, and Victor had a friend who was playing on the band. I can't remember who that was, but he asked someone with the festival, where can I find this friend of mine who plays in Miles's band, and they pointed at be in that trailer over there. So Victor knocks on the door of the trailer and was surprised when the door opened and it was Miles Davis. So he was a little bit taken aback, and Miles kind of hissed at him, like, you know, what do you want? And said, I'm looking for my friend John. And so Miles said, well, you know, he's not here. Quit bugging me. And he closes the door. Now, Victor had heard all the Miles stories from Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter when he was in Weather Report. So without even thinking, and before Miles had a chance to close the door, Victor said, hey, man, he said, I'm not bugging you. I'm just looking for my friend John. And the door slowly opened back up. Miles leaned out. He looked at Victor. He smiled. And he said, you can play. You can play.
Yeah. Hey, Peter, were you in the band with Victor at that? You were in Steps Ahead with him at that time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was.
And for those of you out there who don't know, Peter was in another band that Victor kind of followed him into. Peter with Jocko, and then Omar and Victor jumped into that. But my really quick Miles Davis story, which was also supremely educational, and it involved only 2 words. I mean, it was at 1984, and Dizzy took me to his birthday party in Manhattan, and I'm hanging there at the party. And all the movie stars are in one part of this room that was all, you know, some big restaurant that they had taken over. And the movie stars were over there, Cicely Tyson and everybody from there. And all the musicians, well, we all know where the musicians were. We were at the bar and the food back down on this end. And I remember I'm there, and Marcus was there, and Mike Stern was there. The guys, you know, that were doing that. And I'm 22 years old, and I'm in hog heaven digging this. And then I look over, we're hanging out and drinking, and here comes Miles walking up. He leaves all the movie stars, and he comes over there, and everybody just kind of turns around. And because when Miles walks up, you know, you stop whatever you're doing, and he looks, he goes, y'all like phrasing? And he said, you know, do y'all like phrasing? And everybody just kind of nods their head. He said, Willie Nelson. And he turns around and he walks away. And I was like, Willie Nelson. And it didn't put it together. And literally 20 some years later, I'm in the studio with Willie Nelson. And he played, and then Willie phrased this thing, and I was just gotten there the first day and doing this, and everybody said, man, you better watch one, because if you don't know where one is, you're going to get lost. And I'm thinking, this is country music. How you get lost in country music? And all of a sudden, Willie phrased this lyric, in a way that I got totally thrown off. And I think Kenny Aronoff or somebody was on drums, and they just look at me like, what happened? And Miles came back in my head, phrasing, Willie Nelson. And it just popped into my head.
That's great. That's a great story.
I think that's my favorite Miles story I've heard in years.
Willie Nelson.
Fantastic.
Well, we're getting to the hour mark. I wanted to ask you quick, Peter, what's the name of your app and where can people download it?
Well, we have, let me see here. Hold on. I'm just going to boot them up here. So, pardon the handheld camera. Shoot.
This is great, Peter. Leave those up.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's it's the Mincer Big Band Essentials, and we also have the Erskine Jazz Essentials app. That's all jazz standards with a real rhythm section. And what's hip about it is that there's a mixer, so you can solo something if you want to hear the way one of us played it, or you can mute it. You can record yourself. We also have an Afro-Cuban
Nice.
app, which is, this one's pretty hip. I'll just play a little bit.
Sounds so good.
And a Brazilian app. So they're all on the App Store. You can just type in my name, and I think all the apps should show up. So play along apps, no MIDI stuff, all real musicians, the Mincer Big Band. Just real quick,
are there PDFs and charts available with it?
Yes, sir. So the cool thing about the let me do this again. So the Mincer Big Band, of course, you've got charts, and we did music minus first alto, first tenor, bari, first trumpet, second trumpet,
No.
first trombone, bass trombone, and then rhythm section, because not everyone wants to be a lead trumpet player, and you get the charts and you can print them out, and then you have the mixer. So, for example. I could play this one, and a 1, 2, a 1, 2. So, it's nice in that you can study the way. Wayne Bergeron, he's the number one lead player out here in Los Angeles. How Wayne played the lead part, how the other fellow played the second part. Replace it or just use it as a study guide. So yeah, we have Brazil, Afro-Cuban, 2 jazz standards, 1 plus this, and then David Garibaldi repurposed one of his apps where you can do play along with Tower of Power. So we got that. Thanks for asking.
Man, that's beautiful. Wow, Peter, I'm going to the App Store when we hang up.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And that is, I think that's a good example of what the future of music education kind of looks like, because you can use that in conjunction with a formal education. I think that's a really great app. Can students use that for auditions?
Yeah, and I donated all the promo copies that Apple would let me give to all our students so they would have someone to play with. And Steve, I don't know if you folks are doing this at Berklee, but what we decided to do, how juries, which are like final exams for students, would always be playing on demand.
Right.
play this
Right. In front of
melodic and harmonic, whatever, arpeggios. And because of the vagaries of the Wi-Fi connections, etc., we decided to let everyone do this in what we call asynchronous. So they can record their jury, and we just look at it as an opportunity for them to produce themselves. Now
Right.
you're producing a recording. Send us what you think is representative. Take all day to do it if you want. So we're not looking to pin students down to playing on demand at this point. We're really trying to encourage them to treat this like they're treating anything else. How can I make this satisfying for myself, good enough for someone else to be able to use, and to be able to judge that this is good?
Yeah, I think the skill sets, COVID, I'm always trying to see the bright side of things that don't seem so bright. And on the outside, COVID and what we've all been through in education, it's daunting. But at the same time, there's so much good stuff coming from it. The way we connect, the way we're doing this right now, we wouldn't be doing this before COVID. Chuck, the other day, having 40 bass players, the greatest in the world, attributing Rocco. It's really so amazing. And I think that the technology, like what Peter is demanding of the students, is such a huge factor now, because these students are going to go out better equipped. We always look at what we're not able to do, but what we've been forced to do is put students in a position where they have to get a lot more technologically hip. And I'll tell you this, Peter, maybe not in your world, but I was surprised. Some students really had it together, but others have found a way to get by without learning technology. And these days, as a professional musician, so many revenue streams we need. And one of them is the classes that we wrote for the bass department. And I think Tony Thunder Smith wrote them for the percussion department. But it's a self-producing class where you have to learn. You take tracks. People send you tracks. We've got our arranging department sending out tracks, but you have to produce yourself. And really, in essence, that's what you're asking them to do for their juries. And the same thing we're doing at Berklee with ensembles as well, is the whole multi-tracking around. I wish I had a cool app like that, but it's just a bass. And most of them that like the one back here that Chuck's made history on, you only need 4 strings and 1 note at a time. So, my app's going to be smaller than your app. But I do have a new album that just came out a couple of weeks ago, and if I could even play, it's just an album of duets.
What's the name of it?
It's called Carolina, but you disabled screen sharing, so I can't show you. But it's just,
No, I'll enable it right now.
No, it's just I can talk about it. But
go for it. I just enabled it.
let me see here.
All right.
That's it. That's
Nice.
it there. But it's just duets. Each song is a duet with a different person. But since we mentioned Willie Nelson, there's just a bass and vocal version on there with Willie and Ron Carter. We did some Bach, a duet there, and there's one drum track with Dennis Chambers and I did a duet, Peter and Victor Wooten and Anthony Jackson, maybe one of his last recordings. But anyway, it's out there. I'm having fun with it, and but if you ever listen to any, especially after the story I told, I didn't even think it would all tie together so well. But my duet with Willie Nelson is I was thinking of Miles the whole time, because Willie, man, this song we do, I play it for my jazz students. I say, this is how you use space. This is how you phrase. This is how with Willie, you can feel his comfort leaving space and just leaving it wide open. And just with a bass part under him, with not a band and everything like that, I think you really appreciate the artistry of Willie Nelson. And we did, Peter, you may remember Jethro Tull's version of Beret from 1970. Boo-doo-doo, boo-doo-doo. Anyway, Ian Anderson, we got together and we redid that track. It was a hit back in 1970, and we just did it as bass and flute. It's kind of cool. Anyway.
Where can you get this CD or the album?
It's Apple Music, Spotify, all the usual spots. If you want to buy a hard copy, you can go to Vic's Merch. We're doing it exclusively out of Victor Wooten's store online, and it's VIXMERCH.com.
Fun.
Cool. That's cool. That's talking about space and Willie. I'm trying to get you to tell that story.
Oh.
He won't tell it.
Man, yeah, okay. I'll tell you the low rent version of the story. And wait a minute. I may have some corroborating evidence here. Where is it? Give me 1 second.
This is
we're playing
with Dizzy Gillespie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, there it is. Okay. We were playing Fat Tuesdays. I had just joined the band, and
What year was this?
This was late 83, 1984. A guy named Nasir Abdul Al-Khabi was playing drums, and Hank Jones was playing piano, and James Moody, and so anyway, somehow I ended up in the band, which so I'm up there and playing with Dizzy, having the time of my life, getting schooled on a daily basis. And Night in Tunisia, he made a bass feature, and he did it in this kind of 6/8 feel, and then after the melody, it was just a huge bass feature. And I had, being the good student I was, Peter, and like anybody who's 22, 23 years old, man, it's like what John was talking about. I put every bit of learning for the last 22 years into one solo on bass. It's got this, and then it's got the shout chorus, and then it's got the harmonic versions that go down, and then it's got all of this stuff, and it just went on and on. And at the end of it, the audience would just go nuts. They would just literally, they loved it because it was pyrotechnical. I'll just put it that way. I won't even say it was musical or looking back on it, but I have this, let me see if I can do this. I found this picture not long ago. So this was the night, this is after the gig, and this is literally like 3 minutes before what I'm going to tell you happened. We're sitting around, that's Milt Jackson on the left, of course, Dizzy there. John Faddis is standing behind Mike Longo, who's got his back to us, and we're playing cards. And this is what I call my tithe. This is where I gave back to my boss in the card game at night. And it was kind of expected, you got to get in the game. And so I'm sitting there, and with that same look, Diz says to me, he says, "Steve, you know that solo Night in Tunisia tonight?" And when you're that young, and Dizzy was always giving of compliments. He could give you a lot of other stuff, but when he gave you a compliment, it was beautiful. And I'm thinking, here's Milt Jackson on my right, and there's Faddis over there, and all these, all these people that were part of my record collection are all sitting around. And Diz says, "Yeah, man, you know that solo in Night in Tunisia tonight?" And I said, "Yeah," thinking, oh, here it is. He says, "Man, that was some bullshit." And And he's looking at just like that right there. And Milt Jackson, I'll never forget, it just hit me like a slap across the face. And Milt Jackson puts his head down in his hand right there, and he's snickering into his hand. And Peter, this has gone into slow motion. You know how when your career has just ended in 2 words? And it went in, John Faddis turned around and walked away, and what seemed like 3 hours was just a couple of seconds between this was, and the room kind of settled, and Diz looks over at me sitting right there. He goes, Steve, just remember this. He said, when you play your instrument, leave some holes, man. He goes, you never know. Music might fall out. and I'm telling you, even to this day, when I'm overplaying and all through my career, I catch myself sometimes. And with that statement, I mean, it's so powerful, is leave some holes. You never know, music might fall out. And you know, coming from him, but man, my career, I was on my way up and on my way down with one sentence out of his mouth. And you know, he taught me a lot of lessons, kind of the rough way, but he was a beautiful leader. I mean, and generous and
that was a great lesson. You got it from one of the creators, man, one of the founders, one of the founding fathers.
Yeah.
In no way trying to equal the story, let alone top it. But since we're getting ready to sign off, you all know Eddie Gomez, of course.
Oh yeah.
And Eddie and I were playing in Japan with David Matthews, the pianist and arranger, and George Young and Lou Soloff were the 2 horn players, and they enjoyed playing solos on every tune. And Eddie's kind of had it. This is the final tune of the final set. We're at the Blue Note in Fukuoka, Japan, and Dave Matthews spoke fluent Japanese, so he's announcing that we're going to play a night in Tunisia. And so Eddie goes, psst, he goes, hey, fellas. And they kind of turn around. He goes, remember, he said, it's a night in Tunisia, not a week.
That's awesome.
Man, and Eddie's got a sense of humor that will kill you sometimes. I mean, and he'll do it in one sentence. It's not a big wind up or anything. It's just one sentence.
That's a good one. But Chuck, you got anything you wanna say before we sign off?
I'm smiling and laughing. Y'all got me laughing. We got to do another one. I got so many stories like that to where I've been checked, or I've seen somebody else being checked by another musician or by the band leader that are just hilarious.
Yeah.
You know, but Peter, and you know, it's great to see you, my man. I haven't seen you in 2 years, maybe 3. I thank you so very, very much for your kind words.
Thank you.
And Steve, I see you a lot. Looking forward to seeing you again, my man. Thank you both.
Thank you
for spending this time with John and I. I appreciate it. Oh my God.
Hello, little girl. Little girl, hello. Where have you been? Why did you go? Little girl,
Yeah,
I shouldn't
Chuck.
have to tell you was wrong.
Yeah, Chuck.
Little girl, you know that was wrong for you to leave our happy home. Oh, baby, little woman, hello. Oh, yeah. Sound all right now. How long would you stay? This time, little girl. How long would you stay before you decide to go away? Little girl, hello. You don't know how it's been without your baby. Yeah. Come on in, sit down. Let me tell you how it's been without your baby. Lonely. Oh, it's been so lonely, yeah. Lonely, baby. Hey, it's been so lonely. Why did you have to go? How long would you stay? Can't you see that I love you? Yeah.
Man, Chuck, like, were those double stops? Did he? Those are Chuckisms. I know Donnie didn't write those out. Those are you, baby.
Yep, I sort of kind of had a habit of doing stuff like that. Only when it's necessary. And also to over an E, A, and D chord.
Yeah, yeah. When you got those open strings.
Yeah, dominant or minor. Um, you see, guys, the whole thing about this is, for me, that feel, just the feel of it makes me, I mean, it brings so much joy in that it gives you a chance. It's like meditation. You do something and then you wait for a second. There's no rush to get anywhere.
Yeah.
This February, I was at Berklee College. They gave me a very nice award, Lifetime Achievement Award. And the choir sang Oh, Mary, Don't You Weep, and also To Precious Memories. And I sat there and cried like a baby, although I don't mind crying, like I'm tearing up at now, because I learned how to cry a long, long time ago and not be ashamed of it. But the feel, every time you looked at Aretha, if you just looked at her, there's a certain thing going on, a feel a certain feel. Now, John, I know we're getting past time, but let me say this one more thing about this. I won't mention any names unless it's okay, but I was at a Aretha Franklin tribute the year of her death, right after her death, and uh, it was at a college, a music college. They did a wonderful job, a wonderful job. The bass player was a freshman who played most of the songs. Uh, and saying he was a very good bass player, except that all of those iconic Aretha Franklin hits that had the feel of the bass feel, the guitar feel, all the original sounds. He played none of that. He played like "Look at Me" all night long, and me and the director and the head of the department that we sat down and talked about it, of giving him a video. Now you see, Berklee or USC is a place where he should be, because he's going to learn that what he did was totally unacceptable. And that if you're going to play an Aretha Franklin hit song, you'll play the bass line. It has nothing to do with me being the bass player. If you're going to play the guitar part, play what made that song popular. So in education, I'm pretty sure that he's going to learn how to not play his bass all the time like "Look at Me." Steve, it looks like you're getting ready to say something. Are you trying to say something?
Man, I'm trying to find pictures from that gig. I was there. And that ought to be a hint about where it happened.
Oh yeah.
And but to me that's what education's about. Like this student that night changed his life because you were there, and he finally, when we had what we call, where I'm from, a little come to Jesus meeting back in my office. You remember this, Chuck, right? Yeah, and it changed the student's life, because that was like that moment for me with Dizzy Gillespie. You know, leave some holes. You never know, music might fall out. And I believe it was Patitucci and I sat down with him and explained to him how perilous what he did is to his career. It can happen at college, but Chuck Rainey's sitting right there looking at you. John Patitucci's sitting right there looking at you.
And you and Victor.
Was Victor Wooten there too? Yeah, I mean, it was a beautiful day, and I'll always look at that day, because you sat in with that band and did a couple songs, and they're still talking about it. Still talking about it. And that student, he was the big winner that day. I mean, people would look at it as a losing situation, but that kid learned more in that evening and the next day in my office than he bargained for. I promise you that. Thank you for remembering that.
No, knowing you, I know it was more than he bargained for. In the way I know you took care of it.
Gentlemen, thank you all. Thank you all for the music. My wife is wondering where I am for dinner, so I
thank you guys for staying overtime, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Peter, for that song and for your time, and Steve, thank you for your time and your wisdom, and of course, Chuck.
Man,
what can I
Peter,
say?
I hope you don't mind, but I got a few things I got to bug you about that I hope you can teach me.
Send me an email, Steve.
I will, man. I appreciate it so much.
We can set up a Zoom.
Man, it'd be so great. Thank you.
It's all right. Thank you, guys.
Chuck, you know I love you like an uncle and a brother and the kid down the street all rolled into one.
I love you too, Steve. I'm looking forward to seeing you again, which will probably be next week. No other way you're going.
Somewhere on the online, we'll see you.
Peter, much love to you, my brother.
Thank you, Chuck. Same here.
Thank you, little girl. You just made me cry again, and I kind of like.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for hanging out right with us.
Thank you,
guys.
John. Thank you, John, for pulling us all together. This was fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. I hope to see you again real soon.
Oh, yeah.
Hey everyone, my name is Jerry Robert and I'm the publisher at Black Card Books, and I'm telling you, we have just published this book, The Tune of Success, Unmasking Your Genius, by two musical geniuses who have played bass and played drums and contributed to lots of different albums, playing with Steely Dan, Quincy Jones, Aretha Franklin. I mean, these are two legends in the music industry, and if you've ever wondered about how you break into the music industry, and it's a business, it goes well beyond just talent. It's a business. This book will help you do it, and there's no book like it, and that's why we at Black Card Books could not be happier to have published this book. And if you are interested, or you know somebody who's interested in the music business, get yourself a copy and get them a copy right away. Guys, we are all excited about this. We know this is going to become an international bestseller, and it's going to help a lot of people go to the next level in the music business.